Hello, I'm Boyd Mattson, host of National Geographic Explorer. Forget what you thought you knew about dinosaurs. In this program, we'll show you revolutionary new discoveries that are rewriting history. This was the Ultrasaurus, or at least it was its front leg. The entire dinosaur was more than 5 stories tall. It wouldn't even fit inside this building.
Hold on to your seats.
Paleontologist Paul Sereno is going hunting for a new kind of sauropod. It's a search that will take him on a brutal trek through the searing heat of the Sahara Desert. But even if he finds one, how will he ever get it home?
It was longer than a city bus and weighed close to 50,000 pounds. To sustain its massive carcass, it would endlessly grab branches and leaves and hoover them down a 20-foot-long throat. With each step, a weight greater than an 8-ton wrecking ball would hit the earth. To support such a massive meat, bones, built like steel columns, descended to massive feet that would have left crater-like prints more than 2 feet across. So, you might be wondering, could you hear one of these things coming through the forest on a quiet spring day? I think you get the idea. It's called a sauropod, a type of dinosaur that was one of the largest animals to ever walk the earth.
Hold on to your seats.
And this man has the daunting task of finding one and digging it up.
Hang on.
All in the furnace that is Africa's Sahara Desert. University of Chicago paleontologist Paul Sereno and his team are on a bone hunt. Their main quarry is the complete skeleton of a huge dinosaur, a new kind of sauropod that's never been described before. But work in the Sahara is never easy. Miles from civilization. They are at the mercy of the desert.
It just sunk like it was.
For Paul and the 17 students that make up his team, the expedition will be a mental and physical test that lasts 4 months.
3 of those months are going to be spent in 100-degree weather, in dust storms and windstorms, and digging until your nails are worn off. And you really need to find adventuresome, strong, young men and women to be really excited about it and approach it with a great amount of energy.
Leading an expedition with that kind of energy is a Sereno hallmark. At 39, he has made more significant discoveries than most paleontologists make in a lifetime. In Africa in 1993, Sereno and his team discovered Afrovenator, the first nearly complete predator skeleton ever described on the continent. In 1995, in Morocco, it was another first, the skull of Carcharodontosaurus, what may be the largest meat-eating dinosaur ever described. His finds have been so significant and so frequent, one wonders, can he do it again? The answer will have to wait, because the only discovery he's made lately is that his jack is missing.
Can we put some rocks underneath there? Get some rocks!
The experienced hands know, and the rookies are beginning to realize, that to make a major find in the middle of the Sahara, you've got to get there first.
Okay, we got it. All right, good. That's all because our hijack is missing every year.
5 weeks ago, and a long way from here, Sereno and his team arrived in Accra, Ghana, on the coast of West Africa. When the ship carrying everything they need for the expedition finally arrives in port, the crew works through the day and into the night unloading. At first glance, it's not clear whether they're going on an expedition or simply planning to open Africa's first Walmart. The huge inventory will be managed by Sereno's partner and wife, Gabrielle Lyon.
We're definitely stocked. We have 50 pounds of rice, 150 pounds of couscous, close to 500 pounds of pasta, and then toilet paper, close to 800 rolls. And it's white, unscented. Yeah, I got a complaint about pink toilet paper one time, so.
We're headed out, finally.
Stars above that shine so bright, a mystery of their fading light that shines upon our caravan.
Once they're rolling, Paul sets a killer pace. Every day they spend on the road is one less day they can spend looking for bones. They are headed for Niger. But to get there, they must first cross Ghana, then part of Burkina Faso. That's 1,500 miles on less than gorgeous roads. The first few days are grueling and typically end in nights like this one at the scenic Hotel Mobile, a gas station parking lot.
We'll try and get a couple hours rest here, an hour or two rest, and then we're going to be on the road again.
When they awaken after a refreshing 3 hours of sleep, they find that the driver of their transport truck has disappeared.
So we don't know where he is. He's in town somewhere? The driver is in town somewhere?
Paul has been in Africa for weeks and hasn't touched a bone. So this is paleontology?
It's all part of three-ring circus. It's all part of, it's a little piece of why, it just takes a lot of energy besides walking and striding in the desert to actually make these discoveries. At least we found the driver, though. We found the driver.
Though getting this expedition across Africa is a struggle, it's nothing compared to the challenge faced by those who discovered and then tried to explain fossils in the first place. Take a prominent English museum curator of the 1600s named Robert Plot. In addition to dealing with all that hair, Plot faced a dilemma. He had unearthed a remarkable 2-foot-long, 20-pound thing. But what was it? Plot believed it was part of a giant human, but couldn't be sure. Like most thinkers of his day, Plot's conception of the world was based entirely on the Bible, and there's no mention of dinosaurs nor extinction in there. So what was it? Years later, an editor saw the illustration and titled it Scrotum Humanum, for obvious reasons. And though no one was likely to have believed that they were the petrified genitals of a giant man, given 18th century knowledge about Earth's prehistoric past, which would have seemed more plausible? That it could have been the fossilized private parts of a giant human? Or part of the leg bone of an even bigger lizard? It would take 100 years and many more fossil discoveries before the thinking about Earth's past left the Dark Ages behind. Sereno's problems are a lot less philosophical.
It's flooded.
Of the last 32 hours, they've been driving 28 of them. Now Paul has to gird up for one of the great trials of any expedition, the border crossing.
You can get your passports out. And just stare at the vehicles and I'll see what the situation is.
At border crossings, the situation is never the same. Sometimes Paul may have to haggle over the crossing fee. On other occasions, flashing a copy of National Geographic with an article featuring Paul may have the desired effect. He'll do whatever it takes to get across quickly.
There's a phone call from the embassy.
The team spends as much time getting over borders as they do actually driving.
They're very friendly, but I think they could use your advice.
Challenging as it is, Paul wouldn't even be looking for bones were it not for 18th century scientists like Georges Cuvier. It was this French anatomist who finally concluded that there was something called extinction, that huge animals had once walked the earth. Cuvier's work inspired other scientists who made many new fossil discoveries. But in the early years of paleontology, one of the most important developments wasn't a new discovery, it was a dinner. In the 1850s, to celebrate the opening of an exhibition of life-size models of something called dinosaurs, English anatomist Sir Richard Owen was honored with a banquet. It was Owen who had captured the public's imagination when he coined the word dinosaur, which meant terrible lizard. But then the widely publicized dinner took curiosity one step further. Perhaps because the meal was served inside the body of one of these beasts. Any animal whose carcass could handle a formal dinner for 12 was worth a look, and when the exhibition opened, the public was astounded. The first of many dinosaur crazes was launched. From fairs like Owen's exhibition to the New York World's Fair more than 100 years later, dinosaurs were prominently featured and became fixed in our imaginations, keeping kids up at night and driving some souls to the ends of the earth to find more of them. After 5 days, 14 flat tires, and not a lot of sleep, the expedition has finally reached Niger. That was the easy part.
There are potentially dangerous obstacles ahead. A civil war in this area ended only recently. Violent attacks on the road, in which people were killed and vehicles stolen, happened just last week.
I told you that we might require an armed guard before we left. I didn't know the details of it. I didn't know what happened last week. That was in the future then. We have items that people want, items that they have killed people for. It's a personal risk going out there. There's no question about it. You know, if something happens or if people feel that whatever their obligations are, whatever their personal feelings are, that they've reached that point and want to go back. I don't blame anybody for that circumstance. I will help you leave, in a timely fashion.
In spite of the danger, no one wants to turn back. The caravan heads north, deeper into the desert, further from civilization, toward a bone-rich place they call Fako. That's where Paul found sauropod bones on his first trip to Niger 7 years ago. From now on, though, everything they do, from driving to digging, will be done under armed guard.
Is this a good direction here?
20 degrees left.
Is the site?
Yeah.
20 degrees left?
Yeah.
Okay, so we come back.
Using the coordinates from Paul's previous visit and a satellite navigation system called GPS, they are able to find a prehistoric needle in a desert haystack.
So we're 10 kilometers away?
That's right.
Almost 7 years after Paul first found this site, he has finally returned.
Okay, show me the money. Where's the bones? Bones are right here.
You had a dream that started at that spot 7 years ago, and you now have the chance to see what really is there.
Some of the bones are right at the surface, but will there be more below?
It's amazing.
Are they connected to the rest of a 60-foot-long, 25-ton dinosaur?
There's a lot of stuff here.
Before they find out, they'll need a place to stay.
Kitchen stuff?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
She came as a special envoy from the state of Wyoming.
damn it!
108.
That's on the wrong side.
Man, we're good.
The bones are pinned underneath tons of rock, which will have to be removed by hand. For the next 2 weeks, they will pick and hack at the rock for 14 hours a day, in heat that often pushes over 120 degrees. For the younger students on the team, the term field trip has taken on a whole new meaning.
If you come walking out of here in 2.5 months and you say, that is not the hardest thing that I have done in my life mentally and physically, then you haven't tried hard enough. That kind of sentiment is what ultimately opens the thickest, the hardest doors to actually get through, the most impossible doors to get through.
The hard work pays off. They have removed more than 5 tons of rock and found a surprise. There are not 1, but 2 skeletons. It's a multi-body death scene.
Well, we have a couple of skeletons mixed at the site. That's a conclusion we've drawn after a lot of work. What we've discovered when we first started peeling back the mound here is the hip region and backbone of a very large sauropod. Here's the vertebrae here.
It appears that the animals were the victims of a huge flood. Extremely powerful currents piled their multi-ton bodies in a stack, and the river sediment buried their bones. While they now have the 2 skeletons, neither one has a skull. That's because skull bones are delicate and often weather away. But it's a big disappointment for paleontologist Jeff Wilson.
Yeah, you can see.
I mean, that's what the animal is seeing with, that's what it's bringing in food with, that's what it's, it's meeting the world with that skull, and there's a lot of information in it. A lot of times you can follow the neck, and as it gets closer and closer and closer to the head, like over here we have a complete neck almost all the way up to the last vertebra that's before the head, and then no head.
And then no head is a common refrain among paleontologists. Of the roughly 70 species of sauropods that have been found, only about 12 have heads. But there's still the chance that underneath the pile, they'll find the prize they're looking for.
And that's why I'm hoping that maybe parts of the skull got snagged underneath, and we're not going to know until a little bit later.
A little bit later is a recurring mantra for someone working on a dig like this. A little bit later, I won't have heat stroke. A little bit later, my back won't hurt so much. A little bit later, I get to sleep. But Paul doesn't seem too concerned about sleep.
With our solar lanterns, we can work at night.
That kind of nearly obsessive drive is, perhaps, one key to Paul's success.
Gabe, it continues. The tail continues, or there's another bone here.
When he finally stops digging, Paul and some of the crew are going to relax by trying to put together the jigsaw puzzle from Mesozoic hell.
Yeah, I don't really understand what's going on there.
It doesn't look like there's a good fit.
Since the prospects for finding a complete skull fade with each day, they're trying to build their own with skull fragments they've already found.
Wow! That is
One of the most fascinating of these pieces is a tooth.
top, and 2 teeth in the lower jaw come in just like that, and they create these wear facets along the edge, and it's literally like an interdigitating scissors, and
They believe the animal was essentially a giant tree trimmer whose diet consisted of plants. Now all they need is a jaw and skull to put the tooth into.
You want to try and put it together?
Yeah.
They've got about 10% of the skull reconstructed.
You can actually see the brain cavity, which is right at my fingertips here.
Remarkably, the part of the brain required to operate this titanic creature was about the size of a walnut.
Doesn't require that much.
But what the animal lacked in brain size was more than made up for by its spectacular set of bones. This 50,000-pound creature was basically a walking bridge. Massive vertical columns supported the span of vertebrae, and these in turn, with their various attached ribs and processes, held up the sumo-like guts. Fascinating as this creature is, the painful truth is that getting it out of the ground is a whole lot like root canal, and can get a little tedious, even for the veterans.
It's all the same work, and we do it every single day. It's nice to have things to sort of break up the monotony. The temperature right now is the coolest it's ever been since we've been here. It's probably about 110, 112. I have no idea where
Sometimes he just has to be with his sheep.
Perhaps the only thing more monotonous than digging for dinosaur bones in the desert would be guarding people digging for dinosaur bones in the desert.
La queue qui va tout là derrière. Là, c'est la jambe de derrière, il y a le fémur.
After a couple weeks of watching the team work, some of the guards come over to take a closer look at the ancient death scene.
They know it's the big animal. I mean, they often refer to it now as the big animal. Because they see big bones and you know, it could have been that there were many species here, but it seems like this animal is very dominant, and so when we talk about the big dinosaur, you know, they know what we're talking about.
What did they eat? What did it eat? Les herbes.
Yeah, les herbes. So, see, if they made goats this big, you'd only have to get one goat for the whole season.
They've finally reached the point where it's time to prepare the bones of this big goat for the trip back to the lab.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's a process called jacketing, and it's designed to protect the bones from damage. First, the bone is covered by foil or paper towel. This makes a separation layer between bone and plaster. Then the whole thing is covered with plaster-soaked burlap strips.
So you start off with like skim milk, and then you go like a 1%, 2% whole milk, and then you get like 40% cream, which is what John reached right now.
And it's a lot of fun until you got to pull it off your arm hairs. We should all shave before we do this. We're forced to shave. Watch this. Ugh. Ow!
Once they're jacketed on the top, it's time to flip them and plaster the other side.
Ready? 2, 3.
But the word flip implies something light, like a coin. These coins can weigh more than 2,400 pounds.
Perfect. 1, 2, 3. Man, this is fun. I think I work seriously in this field.
After 5 weeks at the FACO site, they have removed more than 40 tons of rock, excavated roughly 15 tons of fossils, and found nearly every bone of this new animal, except the skull. Leaving Africa without the most important part of the animal would be a major disappointment. So, as they head out to a new location for 3 days of prospecting, they know this is their last chance.
On their way to the new location, they stop at a small village. In the Sahara, where there's a village, there must be water.
We're stopping at a little village that is not far from our site, but it gets rough as we go towards our site. So we're going to leave our drinking water here. Strategically, it's also close to well water for camels. We'll use that well water for camels for our plaster. This is a town called Marindet. It's a town that is not far from the fossil localities. A little village, a camel stop. It's got a lot of wells, and the people are very friendly here. And so we're going to give them a little gift for watching over our water. You only have so many chances to travel around the world and see stuff like this, and it really is part of the fun of doing an expedition like this. Frankly, it is a great break from the routine.
A well in the Sahara is a magnet for life, attracting everything from people to camels to goats. It's the crew's best glimpse of daily life for the desert people known as the Tuareg.
Hungry?
Good luck. For good luck.
Like good watering holes the world over, it's a great place to catch up on gossip and other useful bits of information.
He says he found 2 more skeletons, if you're interested in going to look. I don't know if we have time.
What's the distance? How far?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah, how about in time?
It's never far. C'est à peu près de sa maison.
Qu'est-ce que c'est la distance? You can see from the number of animals, the number of people here, that they walk all over the desert. And so if there's an obvious skeleton somewhere, probably somebody's seen it many times. And so this man seems to have wants to lead us to something that he believes we might be interested in.
This isn't the first time Paul has relied on the Tuareg and their keen knowledge of the desert to find bones. It's a mutually beneficial relationship, in spite of some curious communication problems.
The one thing that you do need to take account of is that they will direct a car typically like they would direct a camel. And this can be quite a challenge when you're going to find a location, because very likely, they've never been in a car before or ever driven to a spot out here. They've always gone by foot. All right, let's take a look.
The Tuareg man would like to, but opening a car door is as alien to him as riding a camel would be for Paul.
There you go. I don't know if there's anything more here. Waiting to see. It's a vertebrae and some limb bones. Limb bone frags. Look, I mean, it looks fairly weathered. Can we have a brush? Alien dinosaur.
The bones are badly weathered, and Paul knows from a previous trip that better specimens and the chance for a skull lay further down the cliff line.
That's definitely a dinosaur.
Still, it's never wise to ignore a tip from a local.
You're working against the odds. So, you know, you take whatever you can get. If somebody says they think they can take you to some bones and it's not taking you miles and miles off course, and you believe the guy, you might even go miles and miles off course. I mean, you take whatever you can get.
Another Tuareg man has led them here, to a spectacular desert cove. This is where they hope they'll finally solve the riddle of the headless wonder.
That's vertebra. There's another one.
Yep.
That's
very weathered.
Theropodium? That looks theropodium. There's the local here called the Dinosaur Graveyard. He's the one who brought us to this place and said, yeah, I can show you the Dinosaur Graveyard. It took him a while to prove to us that it was, but he found that one skeleton, and then we've been spreading out and found quite a few, and it's rich in pockets. This area that we walked from the vehicles is just loaded.
After hours of skull-less prospecting, they decide to pack it in and return to camp for lunch. But then, only 25 feet from the vehicle, in fact, so close they could have backed over it, they make an amazing find.
Holy!
Yeah, but wait a minute. Could it be fishy? Is that the long lost skull?
No, let's not jump to rash conclusions too quick.
Wow. It'd be nice though.
Perhaps the most amazing thing is that anyone could identify this crumbling pile of rocks as the skull of anything. But after weeks in the field, their eyes are trained to see what few others could.
And piecing this together with what we have, I think that the animal's got a skull. It's fantastic.
Wow. Which is it? Oh.
The head is resting upside down, with the bottom protruding from the earth. Most of it is beneath the soil, but would look like this when intact. 2 feet long, 1.5 feet high. It's the last piece to the puzzle.
You know, to come so close and realize that, okay, you've got 55 feet or 57 feet of this animal, but you're missing the last foot, and that's a very important foot, was something that was weighing very heavily on me.
But no more. Their dogged persistence has paid off. They have now found every major bone of a completely new species of dinosaur. Now, they've got to name it.
I thought it'd be a neat idea to name this animal whatever that the Tuaregs themselves call it, if they call it anything specific other than old bones. And so I had been asking some of our guardians if they knew the name that the Tuaregs around here called the animal, and Ima here knew the name of what they call this, the exact name for what they call this large sauropod animal, and it's Jobar.
They would recognize it if you came up and said, "What's that?" They would say it's Jobar. Now we could combine that in some sense with a generic name, as Jeff was suggesting, with what they would all agree is the place name. Well, we're going to think about it a little bit more, but I think that's a good start on a name.
The official name, Jobaria tigidensis, or mythical beast of the Tigiri Cliff, is a gesture of respect to the people of the region. But Paul is bound to do more.
We have an agreement with the government of Niger. The people of Niger, you say, what are you going to do for Niger? Well, we're going to work out the science of the animal, but that's not going to do a lot for Niger. But we are under obligation now, and it's a challenge. We have signed on to reconstruct this animal and make it walk again in less than 1.5 years, and that's our obligation.
A complete copy of the dinosaur will be given to the people of Niger. But before they can even think about that, there's the little matter of getting all 25 tons of Jobaria back to Paul's lab in Chicago. Then they'll begin the mammoth task of making the animal stand up for the first time in 135 million years. One and a half years later, Paul has traded desert vistas for a more familiar skyline. If he faced a difficult challenge in the desert, he faces an even tougher one now. That's because Sereno now plans to reconstruct not 1, but 2 massive Jobaria skeletons, and the deadline for unveiling them is only 2 months away. Maybe it's not the best time for a jog. But Paul isn't running for his health, he's running for money. Every day for the last few months, he's been training for the Chicago Marathon.
Someone has said that if you can finish this marathon and beat some other celebrities, we'll help you do whatever you want to do. And what I want to do is build this dinosaur.
If Paul can beat the other celebrities in the race, he can win money to help build it. One little detail. Paul has never run a long-distance race before, much less a 26-mile marathon. Reconstructing hundreds of dinosaur bones and running a marathon are a lot more similar than some of Paul's students would like to think. Paul and the team brought back more than 50,000 pounds of jacketed bones. First, the bones are extracted from the plaster, and then meticulously cleaned and prepared for casting. The bone cleaning marathon has lasted for months. The goal of paleontology isn't to create mounted models of skeletons. It's to understand the animal's bones and what they tell us about evolution. So why mount the skeletons at all?
I think the whole process of mounting these animals is a fantastic part of my job and part of this work and part of the study, because you know, our inquisitiveness doesn't end with the clean bone.
Paul has chosen a controversial position for the mount, featuring 2 Jobaria with the larger one in a rearing pose.
You look at that skeleton, you're going to say, wow. And I think it's going to immediately raise questions in your mind. Could these animals really move like that? Could an animal rear on its hind limbs? I wanted to say a lot, not only aesthetically, but scientifically, that we think this animal could do this, and we're going to try to prove it.
He has to prove it because he's a scientist. After all, he's not creating some kitschy decoration for a miniature golf course. These models have to be scientifically accurate. So to prove that the dinosaur can rear, they have to figure out several things. First, were Jobaria's bones strong enough to support the awesome weight of the dinosaur when it reared?
I can't wait to see this.
The answer may be in this basement.
That was the first thing I asked Jeff to try and figure out. Can the bones handle it? To me, they look big, but the animal is enormous.
Model of the hind limb.
Wow.
Expedition member Jeff Ogrodnik is also a civil engineer. He has built a simple chain and 2x4 model of Jobaria's leg to figure out what forces were at work on the thigh bone.
This is the pelvis,
right,
and hind limb.
Right.
Wow. So
and
how
these chains represent the muscles that support the bones. When the animal's standing upright, or on 4 legs, the muscle really doesn't have to provide much tension in order to provide stability. But as soon as you reorient the femur to rear back, it's subjected to a lot greater load.
Yeah, I see the chain. Wow.
You can see the chain flexes up, becomes a lot tighter.
When the adult Jobaria stood with its legs straight, the leg bones carried a load of over 13,000 pounds. That's the equivalent weight of 3 pickup trucks.
The center of mass.
But when the animal reared back, it created an incredible amount of bending force on the thigh bone, easily enough force to snap a nearly 1-foot diameter tree trunk like a toothpick.
This device here.
But Jobaria's bones were built to take it. In fact, Jeff's calculations and model revealed that the bones were so massive, they could have handled 3 times that force. Maybe our impression of sauropods as big, plodding donut eaters was wrong. Jobaria seems to have been tremendously athletic and strong. Paul now knows the bones could handle it, but wants to actually see how it was done. For that, there's nothing quite like working with a real sauropod.
Or a gazelle, that kind of stuff.
Really moves.
Oh, yeah. He moves.
Or at least the next best thing.
You can watch what he's capable of and how he's capable of moving. Okay, son, move up.
Paul and Jeff have come to the Bowmanville Zoo in Ontario, Canada. This is one of the oldest private zoos in North America and home to a huge African elephant named Angus.
Here to me, Angus, here to me.
It's the closest we can ever get to anything on the scale of what we're studying. And it's just fabulous to actually be right up next to it and touch it.
Okay, Angus, you ready? Stand by. So Angus, stand by means get ready to do the behavior.
Zoo director and trainer Mike Hackenberger is helping them figure out how Angus shifts his weight back in order to rear.
All right, feet, which is up to the front feet, and stand. See how he puts his weight underneath them? And see how he does it? See how he does it? Lift, lift. All right, well done, good boy.
Wow.
Now we can do this a couple times.
Seeing Angus stand on his hind limbs once isn't enough.
You can see the skin does all this stuff.
How often do you get the chance to work with a mini sauropod?
The angle and how it's positioned while he's standing up. Right here. This way we can track the movement of the hind limb as it...
Draw a complete line. Okay.
Stand by.
It's hard for me to imagine a sauropod in the position that we've put it in without a living animal at least this size to gauge our speculations on. Jeff and I have put, this is amazing how easy he does this. It's just, this is an animal that's going to have to lay eggs. It's an animal that is going to be pushing against its rivals. It's an animal that's going to have to mate and reproduce, and these all assume different positions than simply just walking at a slow pace on 4 legs. Could sauropods do that? That's what we're trying to get at. It's striking how easy it is for the elephant to do this, because it's actually an enormous feat. I mean, when you look at the elephant, it's got not only its weight centered over its forelimb, but it's got this huge head and no balancing tail. And yet, by properly redistributing its weight, it really doesn't have much of a problem lifting off the ground in a hind leg stand. See him do it one more time? I'm curious how much he's bending before he actually lifts off.
It's not very much on it, Dano.
See, it's right as he lifts off.
Lift.
Angus proves that big animals can do lots of things we wouldn't expect,
Good boy. Good boy. Angus, trot.
including some maneuvers which have no known function in the wild.
Head down. Lift. Hold it. All right. Well done. Good boy. Very good. Nicely done.
They need to do a little tree eating here. We're extremely curious as to where the center of mass of this animal is and how much weight it has on its forelimb versus its hind limb.
So, how do you figure that out?
Maybe you should have greased them up.
The answer is at the local truck stop.
Okay, what's that?
Angus will stand with his front axle over one part of the scale and his rear axle over the other.
Maybe have it straddle the crack.
That's what I'm thinking.
Now they can figure out just how much weight is carried by each set of limbs.
Good boy.
No. Hey, Paul, it's 60-40.
60-40?
60% of the weight of the animal is held by the forelimbs, and only 40% by the rear. So that's like the exact opposite of our sauropod.
This is the confirmation they needed. Since Jobaria carried most of its weight over its hind limbs, it follows that it would be even easier for it to rear than it would be for Angus. Paul is now convinced that constructing the model in the rearing pose is sound. But building it is one of the hardest parts of this marathon. Before they can reconstruct the Jobaria skeletons, they've got to copy every bone they've found. That's because they won't use the original bone in the mount. They'll use reproductions. Take the example of the long sought-after and finally found skull. When they found it in the desert, it looked like this.
Great.
After several months at the equivalent of a skull spa, it now looks like this.
So the first thing we did is anytime we had one bone on one side and we're missing on the other side, I reflected it. So I was able to get this shape of this bone without a doubt because we had it on this side. We had this bone, but not this one. So I actually made this one in a hard plastic, an exact replica of this one. We had this one, but not this one. We had this one, but not that one. So I quickly reflected everything, and we were very fortunate in the field to get all of the major jaw bones on one side or the other.
Once Paul has finished rebuilding the skull, they will make a copy of it through an appropriately tedious process.
What we're seeing here is the first layer of latex. It's a rubber which will pick up all the detail in the bone. The latex is being laid to the surface, and he's going to brush it in so that it gets into all the detail of the bone.
6 more layers of latex will follow until each of the hundreds of bones is covered with a thick latex sheath. Once the latex dries, they'll remove the hard exterior and begin to peel it off. While making molds is tedious, opening them up is tense, especially when it comes to something as complex as the skull. More than 40 hours of work have gone into this stage with little guarantee of success.
This is the moment of truth as to whether the hard part will come out. Because if it doesn't come out like that, then you can't open the mold.
I believe this is a success.
Yes.
You're very good. You're getting all the teeth, except that one's loose. But the most important thing is the mold, because that will allow you to pull out a single copy, a hard copy, that you can work with in the final mount.
But they're still vexed by a skull problem. When they were in the desert, they found parts of 3 different sized skulls. In the lab, they built a composite for only the smaller Jobaria. They still need a much larger skull for the other skeleton. To solve this problem, they call Stephen Godfrey, a guy who spends a good part of his life in his basement making dinosaur bones. Godfrey will hand-carve the bigger skull to the exact dimensions required.
I know the length of the juvenile skull. I know I have to increase it by 25% to the size of the adult skull, scale it up. So there'll be an awful lot of foam that will be reduced, taken out of here, to produce the finished product.
Godfrey is a paleontologist and an artist. For the last several months, he has been busily carving a variety of bones, effectively recreating the missing parts of Jobaria in a fetching pink foam. As the skull evolves, Paul is about to confront a transforming experience of his own. It's called the Chicago Marathon. In his quest to raise sorely needed money to help pay for finishing the dinosaur, Paul is about to ruthlessly torture his skeleton by running a 26-mile course. Has Sereno finally bitten off more than he can chew?
Now I realize what I got myself into. So now I gotta run my butt off.
Paul is engaged in a race within the race. A group of 13 celebrity runners is competing for a cash prize, which the winner can use for their favorite cause. Paul is about to run for the bones. But the race has a bigger symbolic meaning, not just for Paul, but for anyone involved in the expedition and reconstruction.
Sometimes it's difficult to understand all the steps involved in an expedition. And you think back to the dream years ago when we had no vehicles, we had no crew, we had no equipment, but I knew that there was a dinosaur out there waiting to be discovered. All the work and the tons of material collected, the hours spent cleaning, and then piecing together and pondering how we should put these things together. It's such a long amount of effort. It's very similar to a marathon. I see running the marathon as demonstrating to people that this is not anything that is beyond our reach. We'll finish the marathon and we're going to construct this dinosaur.
Perhaps Sereno is inspiring because of the scale of the things he tries to do. Running this race is a risk and he could fail, just like you could fail to build the dinosaurs on time. But he hasn't failed. Sereno finished in 3 hours and 16 minutes, a surprisingly fast time for a first-time marathoner.
I did it. Hi. I'm feeling fantastic. Couldn't feel better.
You got the most?
I got the most I could ever get out of my bones. I ran that last mile for Chicago, for the kids back there, and of course for the dinosaur.
Congratulations, Paul.
He placed third among the celebrity runners, but still high enough to win $7,500 for the dinosaurs. For Paul and his wife Gabrielle, it's an incredibly satisfying moment.
Even
Even as he savors completing one marathon,
Paul is closing in on the finish line of that other race. The last leg of the bone reconstruction marathon is run here, in a kind of big tinker toy factory in Alberta, Canada. Led by paleo artist Gilles Denis, these unique craftsmen are masters at bringing the dead back to life. Each of the plastic bone copies has been attached to a giant steel armature and raised up in the form of two huge Jobaria skeletons. Paul is about to see them for the first time.
It's actually, it's quite big. We,
that is a beautiful curve you got on the tail there. Wow.
Yeah, it really came out. You know, it's one of the ones I'm most proud of. It really sweeps very elegantly.
Wow, that is really beautiful. Wow. You really caught a beautiful bit of movement there. That's really nice.
You look at the loose bones and you say, well, that's not that big. You start putting them together, they add up.
You know, now it really, wow, that's beautifully done.
The capstone of this magnificent tower is the skull.
Okay, we're going up.
Whoa.
Oh, just you wait till we get to 28 feet, it really wobbles.
It's fitting that the part of the animal that gave them so much trouble from field to lab is the last piece of the puzzle to fit into place.
Do this.
Let me grab onto it this way.
Yeah, okay.
Like this. Attach that in there.
Yeah, hang on, keep a hold.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Okay, let it go here. Well, we got the skull on there. You want to go back down and take a look at it?
Yeah.
Well, let's do that then.
It is an amazing pile of bones. The rearing Jobaria alone contains more than 250 different pieces. Weighs about 3,000 pounds and reaches a height of almost 28 feet. In the finest Sereno tradition, the skeleton is finished just before the deadline. About 1 week later, and 2 years after Paul and the team dug them up, the world meets the dinosaurs known as Jobaria.
You ask yourself, how am I going to communicate some of this grandeur of past life to the public at large in a meaningful way, in a monumental way, in a permanent way? I think that's when you put these animals together and you try to express their significance in this fashion. When I look at these skeletons, I say, okay, we've done it. And now where do we go next?
Wherever he goes next, he's bound to find yet another new animal, some creature that will force us to confront our planet's past. And that is a story of change, of the Earth in flux, and of animals so bizarre and so huge, we can only imagine and wonder.
That's the skyline of Louisville. On this side of the city is the Ohio River. It's running pretty high right now, but this is just a trickle compared to what used to be here. About 400 million years ago in the Devonian age, this entire area was covered by a tropical sea. If you have any doubts, just look at the fossilized remains of some of those prehistoric sea creatures. Inside this rock is a 387 million year old snail. And this is a fossilized colonial coral head from the same period. Also in this area, you can find the remains of some of the mammals who came after the seas receded. This is the tooth of a woolly mammoth. It's a relative youngster, only about 12,000 years old. And now in some other parts of the world, there are new, rare fossil finds that are electrifying the scientific community. They're unhatched dinosaur eggs. On the outside, they look like ordinary rocks, but inside are actual dinosaur embryos. Up next on Explorer Journal, we're going on assignment with National Geographic photographer Luis Ahoyas. His beat is dinosaurs. His mission, to crack the case for the prehistoric eggs.
I've been photographing dinosaurs for about 6 years now, and I see it as sort of the very beginning of the legacy that I'm going to leave behind for the planet. That's definitely a passion. Nothing sort of gets me worked up like photographing these things and bringing them back to life. So it's like, to me, I'm on a mission. I'm Luis Ahoyas, and I'm about to head out on a story for National Geographic magazine on dinosaur eggs and babies. And this is just the beginning. Usually when you're working with National Geographic, you have the luxury of an incredible amount of time to bring the story in. Here, you need the pictures back in the office in about 8 days. That means I have to go completely around the world at 4 countries, 3 continents, 24 time zones, and take 7 masterpieces.
Good question. I think it's 15.
It's a pretty impossible job, but I told him I could do it, so there's a lot riding on this week.
You've exceeded your baggage a lot.
I've got my assistant, John Knever. He's been with me for 15 years. He's the only person on the planet I know that's crazy enough to come along with me.
Around the world, 8 days instead of 80.
This is Captain Terry Millett.
How time
On behalf of First Officer Ray Gizarina and the entire flight crew, it's my pleasure to welcome you on board our flight this morning.
Dinosaur eggs have been around for a long time, but for the first time, we're seeing which dinosaurs belong to those eggs, because now they're finding babies inside. And that's my story, is to go on the great dinosaur egg hunt and find these babies that are popping up all over the world. We're in a hurry, and it's a good thing that we're in Montana, because they just revoked the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. We're going to visit Jack Horner in Bozeman, Montana. He's the guy that started it all. He's the first one to find dinosaur babies inside of eggs.
Are these crushed, or are these?
They're crushed. Yeah, from the other side. This is the downside.
Doing a story on baby dinosaurs without photographing Jack Horner would be like doing a story about baseball without Babe Ruth, or talking about rock and roll without talking about the Beatles. Jack Horner was the man who started it all.
What would it look like? Here's some of the baby stuff we found on them.
He's the character that inspired the character in Jurassic Park. So every couple of years I'll stop by Jack's workshop to see what he's up to.
And this is a hypacrosaur. So this is the same as the one we were looking at the CAT scan, huh? Except this is a nestling. Cute, isn't he? He's cute. He's cute. Cute. This is cute.
That's good.
I think I have the quintessential shot here of Jack looking like the proud father of a dinosaur. Just down the road from Jack Horner is Matt Smith, the sculptor who we've commissioned to make baby dinosaurs to see what they look like once they just hatch out of the eggs. It's asking too much for the reader to imagine what this thing looked like with flesh on. And that's his job, is quite simply to give this thing a feeling, to give it a personality. I mean, you're gonna look at that little mousosaur and you're gonna want to pet it. We're trying to show the mousosaur, the mouse lizard, off in the best possible light. I'm trying to show Matt's hard work. And to get all the little nuances that can only be achieved through lighting. Get all the little wrinkles. Not get too many wrinkles, but get just enough so it looks like what he intended it to do. I just brought the light down low, and he really looks goofy. Take a look at his mouth. He's got this massive overbite. What else are we gonna do with it?
What about scale?
I don't think we need scale on this.
Okay.
I mean, what would we run for scale? You have a mouse. We have a mouse. Do you have a mouse?
That's the only thing we don't have. No.
This would be great. We need a mouse. A mouse skull is okay, but nobody will know what a mouse skull looks like. Is there a pet store around here?
Yeah.
In town?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just right down the street.
That way. I think a sense of humor is about the most important thing I can bring to a photograph.
That was good.
If you can get somebody to laugh at something, you can get them engaged in the subject.
Oh, wow.
Once you laugh at that mousosaur, people are going to want to go back and read the story, read the caption, find out more about it. But it's the humor that snagged them in the first place. We're going to England, and we go to China right afterwards. We land on Saturday morning. Sunday evening, we take off for China. My passport is absolutely full. There's not room for one more entry. The China visa was absolutely the last time I can go anywhere. There probably isn't a place to stamp it in England. There's wonderful science being done in museums and universities all around the world, but there's some fascinating stuff happening in small little villages. In Leicester, England, in this unassuming townhouse, Terry Manning is producing some of the finest science done by an individual. Terry, to me, sort of, in my mind, he conjures up all the images I have of a mad scientist. He's got these 50 embryos percolating in this mild acid solution up in his attic. What's inside are little tiny baby dinosaur embryos. It's like a little time capsule of what a baby dinosaur would look like exactly. This is wild.
What do you think, Louis?
I think you have this mad scientist thing down quite well. This is great.
It's a 3-day cycle, and over that 3-day period you'll edge away about 2/1000ths of an inch. So it's a very, very slow process.
2/1000th of an inch every 3 days?
Every 3 days. So
how long will an egg take to dissolve?
To take the rock away that we want to take away, it'll take most probably 6 to 9 months.
First of all, he's got the most amazing eggs in the world. They've been called better specimens than Archaeopteryx. Then we find out that he has egg yolk. Now we just find out he thinks he has dinosaur skin. And it's 1:30 and Terry has to go bowling at 8 o'clock. So we're under the gun here to try to get some good stuff in a very short amount of time. It's a little scary.
Is it the right way?
We're late. We have an hour and 15 minutes before our flight takes off for China, and we're stuck in one traffic jam right after the other. That's what's going on. 10. Can you spell the name of the airline again? We missed our flight. It throws off the schedule completely. We might miss our deadline.
It's going to be Monday.
We don't know if we can get a flight out. We don't know if there are flights out.
We're booking the right day.
And it's looking pretty grim.
Yeah. I don't know. What is today? I have no idea. It's December. I know it because I see Christmas decorations all around.
We've heard about this giant egg nest in China that's supposed to be about 7.5 feet in diameter. The biggest nest ever been found. I promised the Chinese that I would be there on time. Now we're going to be, looks like 24 hours late. And if we don't get it, we essentially don't have a major part of the story. It's incredibly important to get to China. We finally got here. We're in Henan province in central China. It's a thrill just to be in a foreign environment, knowing that right up ahead is this incredible specimen. We're hoping to see this huge, giant nest of eggs, beautifully prepared. We get there and it looks like a waterbed. The lighting is awful. It's a hideous environment. We're cold, we're freezing, and quite frankly, I want to go home. It's one of those situations where it doesn't look that good, just looking at the piece, it doesn't look spectacular. It is spectacular, but we want those sort of naugahyde edges of the nest that they've built to go away, and so the way to do it is to photograph it from straight up, looking straight down. All the electricity's off in the village. It's completely out. Nobody has electricity. We've managed to scavenge this diesel-powered generator, and hopefully it'll give us enough power to get my strobes working.
Can you move down just about this much? Down. Yeah.
Turn his head like that. Perfect. Yeah, just like this. Okay. Turn it a little more.
Things were going well, probably too well. Then disaster strikes. I just got a couple shots off before the generator fried my light kit.
Cactus glue. Brand new $7,000 hat. I think we got it.
It's actually kind of pretty. Is it worth $7,000 huh?
48 hours later, we're back on a plane. In the meantime, I have to get new lights because I can't photograph without lights.
Yeah, I think we're pushing 500,000 miles at this point. We accumulated all of our miles together, maybe more. All for the love of old dead things.
Luck has followed us to Canada. We've arrived on the coldest day of the year to a raging blizzard. The whole trip has just become a series of pictures right now. I'm just thinking about, I have 6 done and I have 1 more to go. Like the Terminator, sort of.
That is so cute. Look at that.
Brian Cooley is as passionate as anybody I've ever met about the subject of dinosaurs. He is a person that's able to get into a dinosaur skeleton and flesh it out like nobody I've ever seen before.
Because these aren't precious, okay? I can make another egg.
Oh, really?
So don't sweat it.
If I had to imagine what a baby dinosaur embryo would look like, Brian's done it. This is it. I mean, he's really created here my vision of what a dinosaur would look like. You can almost hear the thing breathing as you look at it.
I just love this. Well, it's come to, the whole story has come to life for me now. I mean, all of a sudden, those beautiful eggs that are wonderful just the way they are, now you have the shot right next to it where it just comes to life. It's like the last piece of the puzzle is found, when you're doing the jigsaw puzzle, the 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. And finally you get the chance to see what it looks like.
In the back of my mind, I realized that we went through quite a bit to get this stuff in a short amount of time, and it was a heroic effort. The readers of the magazine will never notice that, nor I don't think they should care about that. But it is a great satisfaction to actually see the work published. To me, it's more than just a matter of a collection of pictures. It's a legacy I'm building. I want to leave behind a great body of work that shows our natural history of the planet. and to try to get a sense of wonder to everybody of what came before us.
T-Rex. This is the superstar of the dinosaurs. 6 tons of pure predator. And it's not just a big carnivore, it's also big business. Not long ago, the scientific community was all abuzz about the discovery of the most complete T-Rex skeleton ever found. And to no one's surprise, everyone wanted it.
They're meat-eating marauders. Among the biggest, baddest carnivores that ever walked the earth. Animals 40 feet long, more than 13 feet tall, armed with steak knives for teeth. The Tyrannosaurus Rex is the quintessential jaws of death. And an enduring mystery, since no complete skeletons have ever been unearthed. Now, a remarkable discovery is helping reveal secrets that have been buried for 67 million years.
It's not just a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, it's a once-in-100-lifetime discovery, or I don't know, thousands of lives. You know, it's like, I never could have dreamed of finding something so spectacular.
$65 million years ago, a giant asteroid crashed into Earth, wreaking environmental havoc that some scientists believe killed off the dinosaurs. But asteroid or not, one thing's for sure. The world of Tyrannosaurus Rex came to a definite end. Until now. One T-Rex is about to travel through time and embark on an incredible adventure. August 12, 1990. A sweltering day in the South Dakota Badlands. Sue Hendrickson, a field paleontologist for the Black Hills Institute, is about to stumble on the discovery of a lifetime.
There was this one small area I hadn't been looked at. It was constantly on my mind. Every night I'd say, oh geez, you know, I didn't get over there. I really need to get over there. I needed to go and look at that one place. And it's really, really strange to be pulled like that.
Sue has an uncanny knack for finding things, and something seems to be drawing her closer.
She actually called me, and it's no rational explanation for it.
When she spots some bone fragments along the base of a cliff, she senses an extraordinary possibility.
I looked up the hill, and about 7-8 feet up, there was quite a few bones. So then I crawled up beside it to look closer, and there were 3 vertebrae in a row. And there was a rib sticking out.
Sue shares her find with Peter Larson, head of the Black Hills Institute.
Well, immediately I asked Susan, you know, is there more of it? And she said there's lots more. And so we ran over the 2 miles to the site, and there, coming out of the hill, about 7 feet up, was this huge cross section of bones. And I knew at that point that the whole thing was going to be there.
The idea is that I believe that the tail's going that way and the skull is going this way. But we're just going to have to dig it up and see.
It was so, I don't know, the exact word isn't even really in the language. It was way beyond exciting. It was just like climbing to Mount Everest and being at the top and looking around.
When I found her, and then while you're digging her, it's like, wow, I'm the first person to see her in 67 million years. I really felt like she was meant to be found.
The new discovery is quickly dubbed Sue the T-Rex in honor of Susan Hendrickson. The team begins the arduous task of separating Sue from the sandstone cliff. As they peel away layer after layer of earth and rock, her massive skeleton slowly begins to reveal itself. Bone by magnificent bone.
And as we excavated her, especially after we exposed more bones and we realized how complete she was, you talk to her, you feel like she's alive and that she's been waiting. You're uncovering her. It's like you're revealing her, you're bringing her back to life.
Within 17 days, she's excavated and carefully wrapped in plaster jackets for transport back to the lab in Hill City. For 18 months, lab technicians at the Black Hills Institute meticulously prepare Sue for exhibition. She's the largest, most complete T-Rex ever found, and she's to be the centerpiece of their new museum, the magnet that will attract tourists from all over the world. But it's not meant to be. On May 14, 1992, the Institute's plans go awry. FBI and other federal agents launch a dramatic raid of the lab and seize the giant T-Rex. They load all 10 tons of her onto trucks and haul Sue away to Rapid City.
When the FBI came and took Sue, it was probably one of the lowest points in my life. Not only the accusations, but also losing this friend. You know, Sue, the T-Rex, had become a living entity to us.
Sue the T-Rex is put in protective custody, where she'll sit under lock and key for years, buried again. She's about to discover the world of lawyers. It turns out Sue the T-Rex was found on property ranched by Morris Williams, a member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. Williams' land was held in trust by the federal government. The Black Hills Institute thought it had bought the rights to Sue for $5,000, but Williams denies ever agreeing to sell his claim to the dinosaur. A flurry of litigation follows. Everybody wants a piece of Sue. In the end, after an 18-month custody battle, a federal court decides that Sue belongs to Morris Williams and the U.S. government.
I had no knowledge of what dinosaurs were and their value. But the federal government was very insistent that I sell it, and so it went that way.
Williams' agreement to sell catapulted Sue from the jailhouse to the auction house.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sotheby's. We have for auction today the fossil of a Tyrannosaurus rex known as Sue. $1 million now bidding at $1 million, $2.3 million now bidding $2.3.
At $2 million and counting, Sue is on her way to becoming the most expensive dinosaur of all time.
In two places, 3.4 is standing, 5.7, 5.8, 5.9.
And the bids keep rising.
7,000,075. 7,000,006. Fair warning then at 7,600,000. Up here. 7,600,000.
When the bidding ends and Sotheby's commission is added, Sue sells for a record $8.36 million to Chicago's world-renowned Field Museum of Natural History. And she hits the road again. It's 800 miles to Sue's new home in Chicago, And the Field Museum has big plans for her public debut. To get her ready for opening night, paleontologist Bill Simpson and his team begins restoring Sue at their new state-of-the-art dino lab. After more than 7 years, she'll finally be liberated from her blanket of rock. The challenge is to remove millions of years of stone without breaking any of Sue's bones. Using highly specialized tools, the team delicately strips away most of the unwanted rock. It's a painstaking process that will take nearly 2 years to complete. A kind of sandblaster shoots out baking soda to remove the final layer of rock and reveal Sue's chocolate brown bones.
It's amazing. It's an amazing transformation. That's half the fun of all this, is taking an object which looks, not all that great to start with and just make it look like $1 million. Or in this case, 8 million. God, it's just so huge. It's just ridiculous. You could stick a person in there.
I want to say it makes you, more closely appreciate why you don't want to see one alive.
Paleontologist Chris Brochu is responsible for writing Sue's biography, her definitive description for the museum exhibition. One of the first things that catches his interest is Sue's brain.
Sue's brain was about 1 foot in length and about the general shape of a very large sweet potato. Okay, it was about the size of a great big yam. It still blows my mind to look at a skull this big attached to a skeleton as big as this was, and this is the brain. That's still something I have a hard time getting over.
In other words, Sue's big on body, small on brain. But her skull holds a treasure trove of information, and the only way to unlock it, short of chopping the skull in half, is with a giant CT scan in Los Angeles. The Field Museum has to get Sue ready for delivery.
You're only protected when you have the suits on, the hoods on, the air going.
In order to transport and scan her without damaging the goods, Sue's skull has to be wrapped in foil and sprayed with a toxic foam. This is no simple task. The foam must hold the fragile skull firmly in place when it's rotated and scanned.
The skull weighs a little less than a ton, but these bones are 1 or 2 millimeters thick. It's literally built like a 1-ton chocolate Easter rabbit. Okay, hollow but very heavy.
Her skull is morphed into an enormous Nerf-like Tyrannosaur. A custom-made crate fits neatly around her foam skull, and every possible precaution is taken. Her next stop is California, and she's hitched a ride with this driver before.
I picked up Sue in New York at the auction house. Took her to the Field Museum in Chicago. 6 months later, I picked her up in the Field Museum and took her out to Disneyland in Florida. And then they told me to come back to Chicago to pick her back up to take her to California because they want to x-ray the skull. It's the most expensive thing I ever moved before, and 8.6 million is a lot to be hauling around from the East Coast to the West Coast. I'll make sure I take good care of her.
It's 2,000 miles to the city of starlets and dreamers. Dinosaurs have been Hollywood's darlings for decades. They starred in some of the earliest silent movies and have been box office hits ever since.
Buster, there's a big lizard back there and he's heading this way. Now get aboard!
People just can't seem to get enough of them. Movies. Merchandise. She makes it to LA without a scratch and enters the Twilight Zone. She's ready for her close-ups, and this machine can see through wooden crates. Boeing's industrial CT scanner usually scans space shuttle engines. It's 25 times more powerful than CAT scans used on humans. If Sue were a person, she'd be toast under the high-powered X-rays. As it is, no one is quite sure what to expect. This is the first time a T-Rex has ever been X-rayed with an industrial high-resolution scanner.
When they first started shooting X-rays through it, and I was thinking it would be a real tragedy if all we got was a gray smudge and no details.
But their fears are soon put to rest. The CT slices will allow Chris to look inside Sue's brain case and see the details of her ears and nasal passages.
The results are far more than I could have expected. The image quality is fantastic. We're going to learn more about this animal than we could have possibly learned without it.
The images are already unraveling some of the mysteries of Sue's daily life.
From a professional standpoint, these are a gold mine. The most interesting conclusion I've made is Tyrannosaurus rex and its closest relatives were very much driven by their sense of smell. They probably saw very well, they probably heard very well, but their sense of smell, I think, given how the brain was put together, was given primacy. It was really emphasized. These animals smelled their way through life.
Some scientists argue that tyrannosaurs were scavengers based on this evidence.
I don't think we can really answer, was it a predator or a scavenger with any precision, but if these things were like other living meat-eating animals, the answer is probably yes. Most meat-eating animals today will predate or scavenge as the circumstances arise.
The potential for new information is staggering.
There's no such thing as being done with a fossil. Surely somebody 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now is going to come back here, see something I missed, or have some new tool that they can apply to this thing that I can't even dream of, and find something that we wouldn't have even thought was there.
Over the next year, as Sue's enormous body is pieced back together, Chris and others will try to solve some of the unanswered questions. How did she move? Who were her closest relatives? Was she warm-blooded or cold-blooded? And is she really a female? Sue's adventure continues to go where no dinosaur has gone before by taking paleontology to the brink of extraordinary new insights into Tyrannosaurus rex. For Sue Hendrickson, the woman who started it all, it's been a long, strange trip. She hasn't made a cent off her T-Rex or become a sought-after celebrity, but that doesn't seem to matter.
I feel very responsible for her. I don't know why I found her. I don't know why it was me, but it was, and I'm very concerned about where she is and how she's being cared for. And she's in a good place now and being loved as she needs to be. If Sue can be an icon to inspire people to learn, I think that's what she's for. I think that's why she was meant to be found.
That wraps up our special look at dinosaurs. If you want to know more about these prehistoric creatures, check out our website. Our address is www.nationalgeographic.com.